Oh, Nick is here. Hello, Nick. Kimura-san's here also. Nick says hello.
Hello.
Mark Goldberg. Dilali is here. Hello, hello. We miss you. We have a lot of amazing people here with us today. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so as we wait for people to come in, I'm going to play a short little kind of teaser video on Aomori. And you guys can just soak up the sights and sounds of Okinawa and get into the mindset before we start. So let me go ahead and share my screen if I can find it. There we go. Full screen for you guys. Oh, can you guys hear this actually? Hold on. Let me make sure I have the right boxes checked. 1 second. Share sound. Start it. Sorry. All right. Hopefully you guys were able to kind of take a mini vacation. So as we get into it, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Ida Vong. I am a sake specialist for Sake School of America. I also work with Mutual Trading Company. So I'm here today hosting. We have a great event planned for you guys today. We have Toshio Ueno, who is the co-founder of Sake School of America, as well as one of our lead instructors. And we have Christina Veira. She is, as well as Ueno-san, is a Aomori Jinbuner. And Aomori Jinbuner is kind of like an ambassador for Aomori. Jinbun means wisdom in the Okinawan dialect. And so a jinbuner is somebody who's going to spread the amazing beauty and deliciousness of Aomori to the world with wisdom. So just to kind of give you an overview of what's going to happen today, first of all, Ueno-san's going to introduce our guest Christina a little bit more in full. And then we're going to have a kind of like a Okinawa Awamori introduction with Ueno-san. So he's going to give you like the 101. And then we're going to have our Aomori food pairing and a cocktail demonstration with Christina, then a little bit of a Q&A. And we're going to give you guys a little bit of a heads up as to what kind of webinars we have planned next for you guys. So in the next couple of weeks or so, and a little bit of promotions as well as a quiz. All the way at the very end, there's a quiz. It's 3 questions. If you answer all 3 correctly, you'll have a chance to win the Shochu Advisor course for free. So try to take notes, try to pay attention. And Ueno-san, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Ida-san. And everyone, welcome to our Aomori Sunrise with great guests from Toronto, Canada, Christina. And I will share this with you, screen. So our guest is Christina Veira, and she is awesome. She was chosen as one of the Imbibe magazine's 2019 top 75, selected as one of the 50 and the 40 future influence of the global drink industry by WSET and IWSC. Wow. And number 44 by Drinks International 2020 Bar World List. She has occupied every front of house position and a couple in the kitchen while pursuing certification in wine and beer and winning cocktail competitions. Currently, she's a director of programming for Toronto Cocktail Week, a bar and beverage curator for Restaurants Canada, and a national coordinator for Speed Rock Canada. Many hats here, and a spirit educator with WCT and a consultant. Over the course of the last few years, she has been able to earn her skills while raising over 100K. Wow, that's lots of money for charities she raised, with a strong focus on women, LGBTQ communities, and food insecurity. And Christina is highly recognized as an influential leader in the beverage industry and continues to leverage her platform and valuable experience to build out workshops and programming around the thinking hospitality, especially its management, in ways that center internationally empathy and safety as guiding business principles. So that's who she is, and I'm so honored to have her here today. I just want to ask her to say hello.
Hello, so nice to see everyone, and I'm really excited to be here too to talk about one of my favorite spirits.
Great, great. Let's move into my next slide, which is moving on to really quick introduction of Awamori. Aomori is made in Okinawa. Here's Japan, and Japan's the climate is greatly affected by continental with China, so winter time is very cold like today, and some of the region in US, and summertime is very warm. The wind comes from the ocean, and Okinawa is like here. Latitude is 24 and 28, southern part of Japan, very close to China and Taiwan. And the landmass is around, from the New York to Indiana to Nashville. These are the area that the Okinawa Islands covers. It's a big, it covers quite a lot because they have lots of islands, small islands. And it's beautiful. Of course, it's, islands and surrounded by the beautiful oceans in subtropical weather and tropical weather. And the mountainside is also beautiful too. And Okinawa was, used to be a Ryukyu kingdom between 15th and 19th century. So it was a different country, and it has lots of trade, commerce and economical and also cultural communication with many other countries, especially the Southeast Asian country, sorry. And that's why, Aomori is made with Thai rice, right, guys? And also because it was a different country a long time ago. So they have a really, really different, unique culture. Like you can see Haryusen lace, dye textile, and karate is actually, Japanese karate is coming from Okinawa too. And Asa dance, it's we don't have that in the mainland, but it's very different. And sanshin, it's like one of those similar to shamisen, three the strings playing like a guitar. But anyway, those are a very unique cultural thing. And then let's talk about Aomori. Awamori. Awa means bubble. Mori is full of bubble, spirits. That's what it means. And because the alcohol contents are usually higher than the sake we used to drink. I mean, it's been in Japan for a long time before the techniques of distillation came to Japan. So that's the biggest difference between sake and shochu. Sake is a brewed drink. So that's that. And there are many drinks coming from outside of the country to Japan. But Aomori was the first one made by Japanese people. Techniques are, of course, coming from other countries, but we are using black koji, and that's different. And as I said, the ingredients we use is Thai rice or jasmine rice or indica rice in the family rice. We steam them, soak them, steam them. When you steam it, it becomes soft and gelatinized so that the microbe we call koji, this is a koji mold right here. So you have this black fungi microbes here, and you sprinkle over the rice. It looks like this, and under the microscope, it looks like this, and much more microscope here. You can see the spore actually, right? And it looks like this, and it looks like Japanese national flower, chrysanthemum flower. What does it do? So this is very unique because most of the Western world use malt, and Asian people use koji or these aspergillus families microbe fungi to convert the starch to sugar, because the starch itself is not going to be fermenting because the yeast cannot eat them, and that's why you need this enzyme to break down the starch chain, breaking down to little pieces so the yeast can eat them. That's what you need. So it's very similar to beer. Is there is another enzyme activity going on with the barley. When you put in a barley grain into the humidity warm conditions, it's going to start sprouting inside the grain. It's going to produce an enzyme, so it's breaking down the starch. So it's the same mechanic science there behind. But some compounds they produce a little bit different. Starch become glucose by amylase and protein. Proteins sometimes it's too much. It's not that good, but that's why most of the rice are polished off and become amino acids, so more umami. And lipids become more fatty acid glycerin, so it gives you more. These are, especially glycerin is the one gives you more the bubble. Okay, fatty acid will give you later on consumed by yeast. It become more different kind of aromatic components. Okay, different country has a different microbe in Asia. Sake is yellow koji, Korea is nuruku, and baiju is made from kyu, and lakpan is for laolong for Philippine spirits, laolong, and also pineapple vinegar. And Taiwan, they use red koji for shaoxing, and also natural red coloring for the food like Peking duck. And for making those koji in Japan for Aomoris, for the small production right now, these are modern type, but they can use these small ones. They open up these parts and you put the rice in and the koji inside and create it in there. Or you can, for large production, you use this bigger spiral machine. Why we use black koji for Aomori because I said Okinawa is a tropical region, so it's humid and warm. So the bacteria can grow into the mash easily and spoil the mash. But black koji produce a lot of citric acid. If the acid level is high, it will protect the yeast from unwanted bacteria. That's why we use black koji, not using yellow koji. Okay. So in the tank, you put koji, yeast, and water. Start fermenting. Looks like this at the beginning. Black cap. The grains is still there, and after a while, it's going to start fermenting. Looks like this. And then you will produce by yeast. You have, this banana flavors and, some of the ethyl smells like apples, and acetaldehyde smells like green apples, and those things comes out. And also some rose petal, the aroma would come out from some of the isomer alcohol and some fatty acid. Okay. By the way, it's the ferment, as I said, Aomori is still spirits, so it's not brewed alcohol. So you have to distill them, and many of them use this type of the pot still. Not all of them, but this type of still has more surface area. And the neck is shorter, so it gives you more complex, the more bold flavored the liquid distillate. And these ones are a little bit longer and on the neck, so it'll give you a little bit lighter. And also there's a two still you can use for Aomori. One is for regular still, and the other one is vacuum still. So the lower temperature boiling points on the vacuum still. So the only the components are lighter ones goes up and distill, and not those heavy ones, and not by some components by heat will not go up. So it'll give you much lighter, not too much caramelized the flavors, and lighter mouthfeel. And those lighter ones have lots of these kind of smell. Acetate smells like banana, and Aomori is different from shochu. Shochu is a Japanese spirits in the mainland and Kyushu, and they don't have so much this mushroom smells and not so much this smell in shochu, but Aomori does, and that's very unique, especially by aging it. Because most of the shochu, it doesn't need aging, but for Aomori, there are some of the Aomori is aged in a way very similar to Solera system in sherry. This is shitsugi. We call this system is called shitsugi for making aged Aomori. So you have new one and you age them, and if you take out from this one, you have to add from the old one to new one to old one. So very similar to the Solera system. And by aging, sometimes it creates vanillin, smells like vanilla ice cream, which is very unique, and also chocolate smell too. And so those smell, and sometimes smells like this maple syrup, and these caramel smell is the same thing, mainly coming from this clay pot. Maturing in there will create those flavor and aroma. And as I said, black koji produced this mushroom smells too, in comparing to other ones. And also, mouthfeel on Aomori is fantastic. You will be tasting some of that more richer aged Aomori later on today with Christina. Some of them has a much more oiliness to it, creaminess to it, and density to it. So So some of the fresh one, lighter ones has more fruits and grassy ones. Some of them aged one has more vanilla caramels and a little bit of the more oil to it and some vegetable notes and also caramelize these toasty notes too. So depending on what kind of Aomori you're tasting, it's gonna give you a different thing, a different flavor and aroma, and you can enjoy it. And just for information, these are the Okinawan specialty fermented tofu. These are very unique. This one is a sea snake, and this is a rattlesnake, and lobster, and this is a seaweed egg. And they are very into pork, and lots of this pork feet and lafte and these the intestines. And this is from years they consume a lots of pork there, and Aomori goes well. So we're done. Now Christina is coming, and she's gonna be presenting these three pairing: stuffed arancini with Mizuho and Talbot with Hanashimauta. She's gonna explain more. I cannot read this foreign language, so she can explain better on this one. And chocolate truffle is kusu from Sakura Yamakawa. And these are the ones she's gonna be talking about. And one is this, second one is this, and this. So here you are, Christina, your turn.
Amazing. It's so happy to have everyone here. So I'm going to walk you through this pairing and just a kind of thought process. So almost just over a year ago, so in January, I was really honored to be part of the WSET educators trip to Japan. And we actually started the trip in Okinawa, and we started with Aomori, which was really great to have that, not only because of the historical grounding of Aomori, but just to start that as the way that we started to understand especially how Black Koji manifests itself, as opposed to where you'll see like white Koji in other places in Japan in shochu production. We got to really get to see those flavors, and it was much more of that kind of like mushroom, that maple syrup, that like fun, savory approach. So for the first pairing, we're using the Mizuho. And what I wanted to do is lean into a drink that we actually had at a bar in in Okinawa, our first day there. And we had this drink that was made with like tomato and basil and tonic and like really light, bright and savory. I'm from Canada, in case anyone didn't know. I'm from, it's really cold up here, and one drink that we're really known for is Caesar. So it's really interesting to be so used to a drink that's like a Caesar, which is usually with vodka and like this bright tomato and like there's more like this saline characteristic, and then to have something that kind of reminds you of it but different. So when they came to me and they're like, all right, so do some pairings, we want it to be accessible. And one of the things that I really have enjoyed and a lot of people enjoy is like Italian food. So a lot of these things are plays on little kind of Italian comfort food. So we have some arancini. Arancini are just basically deep fried rice balls with cheese, right? So we're gonna have something that's gonna be a little bit crunchy, a little bit soft on the inside, a little bit salty, a little bit savory. And it's with an arrabbiata sauce, which is basically just a spicy sauce, like a spicy tomato-based sauce. So these are going to play well together, and I'm just going to make a nice, long, refreshing drink. That was another thing I really enjoyed about being in Japan, is I love cultures that really embrace a longer drink with a little bit of texture. So as I mentioned, with the dish we're going to get like crunch and salt, and it's going to be a little bit even like cheesy. We're going to get all this, so we're going to have a little bit of texture in our drink. So we are going to start, and it's going to be a build. So we're going to start with just 1.5 ounces of our Aomori. And then I did an infusion with a little bit of the Aomori with some Caesar mix and tomato and basil that had some smoked maple in it. So we're putting 3/4 of an ounce in there. I also wanted to add a little bit more acidity because what I described was something that was really rich. So you can do what we did with the dish if we were going to serve it in a restaurant where you have a sauce to cut that, like the richness of the actual balls, but you can also have some acidity in your drink. And that's something I like to do if you're doing a pairing. So I'm actually using this product that's essentially apple cider vinegar that is unpasteurized and unfiltered with a little bit of maple syrup as well. So I just want something a bit rich. And I want to lean into that, like as was mentioned in the presentation, those maple notes that you can sometimes get, those caramel notes that round it out, because we talk a lot about the savoriness of Awamori, but there's also maybe not in terms of how it expresses as something sweet, but there's also some of those more like baked and devout flavors that we get, especially in an aged Awamori. All right, we're gonna add a bunch of ice. It's like looking for the ice, it's in front of me. And for those of you that aren't in Canada, we are in the middle of a lockdown, so all the bartending we really do right now is for Zooms. So I'm gonna give it a little bit of a stir. Just obviously to chill it down a bit, get it diluted. And we're gonna do what they did at the bar. So I thought it was such an interesting thing to take some tonic and to use it to lengthen the drink, especially something savory. The funny thing about Caesars is they're actually usually pretty sweet. There's a good amount of sugar that goes into them. So what I used didn't have any sugar added. So the sugar from the tonic isn't going to interact with it in a way that isn't unpleasant. And try to use a lighter tonic if you can. And we're basically, once we've diluted and stirred it, we're really only adding just a touch. So we're just going to make it pop a bit. Lightly agitate it. And then what you can do with this, if you like, is you can top it with your favorite pickled vegetables, especially something that's a little bit more aromatic. All right, so cheers.
Cheers.
And this is basically like a much lighter version of something inspired by a Caesar. Amazing. All right, did you have any questions about that? Saw some comments.
So Christina, it's a little bit that acidic side of the drink, correct?
Yeah, so I used, when I play around with vinegars, sometimes I actually really like to use sweeter based vinegars. So using an unpasteurized apple cider vinegar that had a bit of like raw maple syrup added is something that's going to be a bit rounder than say reaching for like pickle juice or white vinegar, right? When we were in Aomori, when we were trying Aomori, we actually got this byproduct of distillation that was basically like full of probiotics. And what was really nice about that is it really highlighted how Goji doesn't produce like that acetic acid that can sometimes be super hard on palates. It's like this bright citric acid note, and that's what you're getting a lot of from the black Goji. So trying to play around with the vinegars in this drink is also to play around with just that process that we're getting from the fermentation and from using Goji particularly, as opposed to using something else to saccharify our base, I guess our base grains, which is the rice.
How did you choose? I'm sorry, arancini.
Arancini, I wanted to choose something. So arancini always sounds fancy, but like once you have it, it's basically just this like deep fried rice ball with cheese, right? So I kind of wanted to do something that was that high and low. And I find like we're in the middle of winter up here. It is, I mean, I guess there's snow all over the continent right now in North America, but it is cold. And you just kind of want something just like deep fried and warming, but still feel good about it. So that's basically where that came from. And we offer them here at our restaurant as well.
Okay, I want to try it with that Aomori.
Nick, it's not a requirement that all cocktails contain a certain amount of maple syrup, but it's highly encouraged by the Canadian government. Oh yeah, and to Sarasa, before the apple vinegar, I had infused a bit of Awamori, just a little bit of it, with some tomato, basil, and like smoked maple extract. So I didn't want to do all of it. One, it's really hard to get, so I'm not gonna manipulate all of it. I'm gonna keep some of it as is, and I just wanted to have that backbone of that like tomato and herbaceousness.
And what were so you said 1.5 ounces of the Mizuho, but what about for the rest?
Yeah, so it's an ounce of the mixture. It's mostly going to be that tomato juice, and I can give you that recipe for it as well. And then it's a half ounce of this awesome apple cider maple like living vinegar. In general, I love playing around with different acids, but I would say that if you're going to play around with different vinegars and acids, you're going to hopefully do that with something that is higher quality. So don't reach for just like the cheap white vinegar. Get something that's like even like a verjus or something like that, especially if you're close to wine country.
And I think not everybody knows what a Caesar is. Could you tell us a little bit more?
Excellent question. All right, so a Caesar is basically like Canada's Bloody Mary. We use celery salt instead of like white salt. We have clam juice in the mix of the tomato juice. So it's not just plain tomato juice. It has clam juice. There's actually a little bit of sugar in it as well. It's like a richer, perfect Bloody Mary, but still has Worcestershire sauce, which I think you do in a Bloody Mary, Tabasco sauce. And people always zhuzh it up, but that's the biggest difference. Your salt rimmer. For this, I'd actually put a pinch of Maldon salt in my mixture, but I didn't want to do too much. I love salt. Not everyone does, and it's easier to add salt than to take it out.
Scott says that's a good version of a Bloody Mary, basically. And Nancy is actually asking, can you tell us why you picked this particular Aomori for this cocktail?
Yeah, so when I got the Aomori, what I wanted to do was see what would like, I had a menu in mind. I knew that I wanted to have something that was like a bit more like a richer appetizer, but something you could eat in a restaurant as well as just have like on your couch watching Netflix. So the arancini worked really well for that. The fish dish is something that is like one of those like set it and forget it dishes. So it's just, you wrap it in parchment, have it steam, and has some like really bright characteristics from the caper berries. And then we have this chocolate for the end. I didn't know necessarily what Awamori I was going to get for this, but what I did know is that there was a few different styles that we really kept encountering. We would encounter something that was like a little bit like just like bolder and like fuller, higher alcohol. We'd often encounter something that's a little bit lighter and maybe it has a bit more age, a little bit more of that mouthfeel and texture. And then we'd often encounter something that is like kind of all that, but then even has this like undercutting of this like richness and maybe some sort of caramel potentially from age, right? It's like that kind of inert aging process. So knowing that in my head, I felt like that bolder one would go really well with the arancini. That like kind of lighter one would be something that could go into our transition for our meal. And then that more like aged characteristic one would probably be really good with chocolates at the end.
Thank you.
All right, are we ready for the next dish?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, so we pre-cooked it, and then for my lucky people in Toronto, they all got this before. So it's just in a little parchment, put it in the oven, bake it, and then you open it up after. Again, this has like some tomatoes, some caper berries. What I wanted to do with this as well is kind of mimic how you might make a meal. You might have some flavors that go throughout, but they're going to taste different and be prepared different throughout. You're not necessarily going to go from. I mean, I do it sometimes if I'm lazy, but you don't always go from say like sushi as your first course to like a heavy pizza, like all the way over to, I don't know, like an opera cake. You're usually going to have a kind of theme to your meal. So that's what we're doing with our main dish. And I really wanted to lean into some of those like lighter, more delicate, like prettier approaches to our awamori. So we're going to do a stirred cocktail, and a cocktail that is inspired by one of my favorite cocktails, which is bamboo. Inspired, it's not really a bamboo, but just the kind of integration. So we're going to start off with and this is going to be served up. We're going to start off with 1.5 ounces of the Hanashimauta. Right. And then we're going to do 1/2 ounce of dry vermouth. So I'm just using dull and dry, like a just very nice serviceable vermouth that would work well in a martini. We're going to do 1/2 ounce of Tio Pepe, so Fino sherry. You could do this with an Amontillado as well, especially someone that's drier. It's totally up to you. I'm a big pheno fiend. But some people, that wasn't on purpose, that was just me being corny, naturally. But some people prefer to have a little bit more body to it. And then we're gonna do a 1/2 ounce of dry curacao. What I wanted from the dry curacao, so dry curacao, if you don't know, is an orange liqueur, also made from a cognac base, so a little bit richer, some aging, some sweetness. What I really wanted from that was for it to like really add a body to round out the dish. Even though our dish is still lighter, it's still gonna have a little bit of like natural oiliness from the fish. It's a turbot, and it's still gonna have like that salinity and that body that's coming from the vegetables paired with it, that if I had just not put in something that also added a bit of body, it might not come across. It might just get lost in the whole mix. So that's our build. So we have 3 ounces total in our mixing glass, and we're gonna add some ice. Ooh, that's a good question, Wendy. So is Awamori well known in Canada, or is it fairly new to the Canadian market? We are not lucky enough to have it really on the market right now, but it is something that I would really hope to change. It's interesting because you really have to be beholden to, like I'm in Ontario, so we are, for better or worse, a control state. Everything comes through the government liquor stores. So what you rely on is people really showing an appetite for a spirit, and then people just buying it when it's on the shelves. So even in the last couple of years, we've really seen the amount of shochu in general explode on the shelves, and people get it and they enjoy it, but there just needs to be a little bit more literacy from the consumer side, just so they know what they're going to get. What I do love about shochu in general, and then Aomori, is its accessibility for a lot of different reasons. Like not only just the corporate way of just accessible for price point, but also in terms of the alcohol percentage, especially being a bit lighter, the high amounts of aromatics you're going to get with that, and how it can stand out in a soda, but without being overwhelming. It's not only like an incredibly overly pronounced flavor profile. It's not polarizing, in my opinion. It's very easy to learn to really enjoy it. So I think it's one of those things that when people reach out and maybe pick it up and they're not too sure what it says on the label, take it home, they're really going to enjoy it. And there are quite a few Japanese people, not only in Toronto, but across Canada as well. So just even having a broader range of products, I think, is important. Okay, so here we have our cocktail. It's the wash line. And when I was allowed to go to restaurants when we weren't in lockdown, I was always a really big fan of having a martini with a dinner. Always just makes you feel like you're out. So I wanted to do like a twist on a martini for this meal as well. And this, again, something to just live up to the lighterness of the fish. If I'm going to maybe have some cheesy rice balls to start, maybe I'm not going to do that throughout the whole meal.
Oh, you're muted, Ueno-san. But all right. So Scott's saying he's from Toronto, and unfortunately their selection is very limited as well. Dila saying that it's a very beautiful, vibrant colored cocktail. I agree. It looks very gorgeous. And in California, they're only allowed to use 2 ounces of alcohol serving at a bar. How about in Canada?
Great question. It varies from province to province, but technically we do not have a maximum serving of alcohol per drink. What it does do is it increases the liability of the person serving it. So that is why bottle service, for example, is allowed in really any place that has a liquor license, but you are allowed to take it away from them. Say if they get a bottle, or let's say if you gave them a 15-ounce cocktail for some reason, you are allowed to take it away from somebody if you think they've been overserved. Crazy like that.
But that's why we have responsible bartenders, right? And hopefully responsible consumers.
All right.
Oh, you know what? Piggybacking off this one. So the awamori that you're using is called Hanashimauta. And Ueno-san, I know that Okinawans do call awamori by another name. What is it?
Yeah, as Christina went to Ireland, right? And from Canada, it was beautiful, small, island she alive. And in Japanese, its island is Shima, right? Shima, and any spirits or any drink, alcohol drink is sake. So they call Aomori, Okinawan calls Aomori Shimazake. Shimazake. That's, you know, their how they call the Aomori in their local calls that name. So that's another thing. The Shimauta means Shima is, you know, island. Uta is a song. So
They call it Shimazake, right?
yeah, Shimazake. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Also, Pablo is asking, does awamori have to be mixed like a cocktail?
No, I don't think so. I mean, most of the time we had it, granted we're educators trip. Most of the time when we had it on its own, or when what is actually incredibly common. Is with water, either cold or hot water, depending on the temperature. Many people really have preferences in either way. And then also potentially on ice or obviously like as a highball. That was the majority of the ways we had awamori. I definitely think that is informed by the style of trip we were doing. I think if I was just there in Okinawa, wanted awamori, went to a bar, they were probably more likely to give it to me as a cocktail, but it really expresses itself very well on its own. And part of that is because many awamori are 25, 28, 30%. There are quite a few that are 43. But when you're looking at something that you can sip on its own while being paired with a meal, you want to have something that is a little bit lower in alcohol, as opposed to trying to session. I mean, there's probably, this is American, most people here are American, I think. So I think people who enjoy barbecue and bourbon will probably disagree with me on this, but I don't think it's as easy to session something that's like 50% alcohol and with a meal, especially if it's a meal with delicate flavors. And a lot of the flavors we had at our meals in Okinawa were like, yes, some were like pork, very rich, but many of them were not, were also towards that lighter end, which we saw in that first slide too. So, and you're looking at a spirit that is traditionally paired with food, not something that is only left for, say, partying or after. And I think that's a really important distinction to make, especially when we're looking at spirits in North America.
Absolutely. And Wendy's got an amazing question. If you make awamori outside Okinawa, can you still call it awamori? Is it regional like Scotch?
It is regional. You cannot even make a quote unquote awamori outside of Okinawa. So there's a few things too in terms of the rules, which I guess technically you're right. Like you can mimic it in terms of like how many adding of koji there are, like how it's fermented, everything. There are very strict rules around it, but you can't just hop to another island in Japan or area and then call it awamori. It would have to be from Okinawa. So it is very regional, arguably even more regional than parts of like some approaches to Scotland, because it's not a country, it's actually a smaller subregion. So it's more like a cognac, to like, if you want to look at it that way, it has to be from there.
I have a question. What do you think about, you know, especially in Canada, it's cold outside. What do you think about warm shochu or warm awamori?
I really enjoyed it. Like when we were
in your market.
Yeah. So like warm shochu, I enjoyed a lot more than I thought. I would say again, that's partly because so many of the shochu we had was a lower ABV. There's a whole thing with like just hot alcohol sounds weird in North America if you're going to give people like hot vodka or like hot gin. But hot drinks are very tasty, or warm drinks are. So I did really enjoy having like a awamori or a shochu with warm water, especially at dinner. I actually found it was like really calming in terms of being digestive. And it was a very nice change to what is typically when you go on these work trips and you have dinner and then you just have like non-ending like wine that can often also have textures that will interfere with the food, or in a different way, having something that is overall going to be like a lighter palate, like lighter on your palate with water, was like very nice for your meal. And you can pretend that you're actually hydrating when you know you're not. What is a good temperature? I feel like you know this better than me. I feel like it was often at like 60 degrees Celsius. So I don't know Fahrenheit. What would that be?
Yeah. It's gonna be like, it's depending on your liking, preference, and it can be a little bit warmer than your body temperature to up to 55 to 60, as the Christina was saying, up to 60. The cooler one would be like 40 to 45.
Sorry, just piggybacking off. So I know that a lot of Awamori is also the GI for it is it Ryukyu Awamori?
Yeah.
Can you explain to everybody why it's Ryukyu Awamori?
Oh, Ryukyu is, there, as I mentioned earlier, Ryukyu used to be a kingdom. The Okinawa used to be called Ryukyu Kingdom. And that's the reason why, the GI sometimes says, Ryukyu Aomori. Yeah.
And before we jump into the last pairing, Kimura-san actually has a question. Like, what do you think about Aomori as a cocktail base, including that aroma that you get from the koji? Like, how do you guys handle that?
I like it as a cocktail base. I think one of the things that can get frustrating sometimes when you're creating cocktails is I feel like palettes are switching more from like bright fruit and those flavors into, many people want something savory, something richer. And even just from a ask perspective, a lot of people want food that will pair with, like, cocktails that will pair with food. And I actually think a lot of classic cocktails do not pair very well with food. I find they are kind of made to be experiences unto themselves and not made with food in mind. What I really like about Awamori and the background of it, especially having those like umami characteristics, and actually also having that that texture that you would tell if you have it on its own. All those oils that are like left behind and that are like really let to like mature and to develop when they age. What I love about that, and like it kind of gets somebody put a question about if it's good in a freezer. Many shochu and Aomori, if you put them in the freezer, as long as it would take still quite a bit of a very cold freezer to truly freeze it. It gets this like nice like unctuous like thickness about it. Some of them do, and it gets us this like really bold texture that you don't get from a lot of say other spirits when you freeze it. So I think freezing is its own really fun thing. Like when we went to a shochu distillery in Miyazaki, they showed us what it's like frozen and they poured it on ice cream. And it like blew my mind because I would have never thought to freeze some shochu and pour it on ice cream and call it a day. But just because when it froze, it got this like really nice texture to it. It was a nice experience. Yeah. Yeah, watch any alcohol. You don't want to leave it too long.
Christina, what do you think about the low alcohol cocktail?
But I like low alcohol cocktails. I actually think they're really good in general. I think sometimes we do ourselves a disfavor or disservice rather in bars and restaurants because we over talk our strategy. I think what is nice about a lower alcohol cocktail, however you choose to look at that in terms of the ABV, is you're really giving people the opportunity to try more drinks over a longer period of time without having to worry about their own consumption. And a lot of people, who knows if they may really want maybe one drink or two drinks, but then a couple hours later, they might need to drive, or they're really trying to watch their tolerance. Maybe they have an important meeting the next day. Maybe they have to go home to see their kids. You never know, right? Assuming that everyone can have a 2 or 3 ounce product that has 45% or 50% alcohol as its base is really like, one, you're kind of potentially losing that second sale. That's how you want to think about it in terms of money. But you're also really, you can burn someone's palate. Like your palate gets tired over a lot of alcohol. Everyone who tastes knows that. And you're not giving people that chance to really explore. It's what I think is actually a problem with a lot of cocktail tasting dinners when they're not made with lower alcohol pairings throughout. If anyone's done them, sometimes by like course 2, course 3, you can't, like you're not tasting that much, right? You've had too many high alcohol and sometimes high sugar drinks. So I'm a really big fan of lower alcohol and lower ABV cocktails. And the second cocktail we had is definitely in that zone because the like how much percentage of it? It was 23%, 24. So we used a 24%, and then everything else we put in there was a sherry or a vermouth or a modifier, right? So we're looking at an overall lower alcohol cocktail than say if we had done like a traditional, say, gin martini.
Absolutely. And since you did mention pairing shochu with dessert, let's move on to the very last one.
All right, let's do it. So we have the Sakura Yamakama. And we are going to pair this with a Cafe d'Orzo truffle. So we're just looking at like a coffee and rice flavored little truffle. So I'm very lucky. I get to work in an environment with very talented kitchen and pastry and what have you. So I get to try this. But I would suggest that if you have any awamori at home, don't only think you can only have it with something savory. Like I kind of showed the gamut, right, of the types of flavors you can do. You can also have it with something sweet, and dessert isn't only the purview of, say, like scotch and rum, right? Every culture likes something sweet at some point in time, right? So it makes sense it'll pair. So we're doing a truffle. You can really do any kind of truffle. I would suggest something maybe towards the darker spectrum. If you're going to pair it with awamori, maybe not like as much like a milk chocolate or a white chocolate, but I don't think you're going to beat yourself up if you have any chocolate with any awamori, just so you know. But yeah, so we're going to pair it. I didn't want to make a cocktail for this one. I just wanted to have it straight. But then we did talk a lot about adding water. And this is where I think is also a really good example of maybe you don't add water in like a 2-to-1 ratio, like 2 parts water, 1 part. Maybe you just do it in a 1-to-1 ratio of some like nice warmer water. So you just have something that's a little bit smoother to go down as you sip at the end of the meal.
Yeah, Ida-san bought us a chocolate. Thank you, Ida-san.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So if any of you guys didn't get your partners any chocolate for Valentine's Day, definitely pick up some shochu and chocolates.
And then too, like this one we're doing, like we're looking at an aged higher alcohol awamori. So the truffle I have is like very rich, coats my mouth. That's an issue when you're trying to pair, say, chocolates with like wine, right? It coats your mouth and wine does not stand up to it. Maybe a couple of ports might. That's why I really do like pairing things like chocolates with a lot of spirits. And a lot of people say gravitate towards you're going to use something like a scotch. What I would say, though, you can just as much do as you can use something like this. You want a good amount of alcohol, which we have with this. We have 43%. You want something that has a nice amount of like body and aromatics. And those aromatics have to be enough that they're going to linger once they already do the cleansing. You don't want it to just cleanse your mouth and then you don't taste anything. You want to have some other flavors and you want to have them interact. And because we're looking at an aged awamori, all those subtle caramel, like sotalone, like maple notes are really going to interact with the chocolate in ways that maybe sometimes can be hard to pick up on their own.
Especially this one is, I said, kusu. It's 5 years to 15 years, each same proportion of 5 to 15. So it has a lots of caramelized, little bit dark chocolate flavor too. So it's very nice.
And we have a question asking, would you recommend to pair that particular awamori with mochi or Japanese cheesecake?
I like the idea of it with the Japanese cheesecake because what I'm really enjoying right now is how the awamori is like interacting with that like mouth coating texture that I'm getting from the truffle. So I really like with that. Mochi too. I think it would go well, but I definitely think like the cheesecake is a bit more in that zone of something that it would be like really delightful to explore with.
I absolutely agree.
I think people don't talk about texture enough when they talk about food pairings and drink pairings. I think we ignore it. I think that what's something that's really exciting about shochu in general as a category and awamori specifically is you have a lot to play with texture as opposed to, say, some other spirit categories like I guess vodka, for example, or even certain types of whiskeys. You're not necessarily going to get that same oiliness or weight from many whiskeys, or it might be seen as more of a fault, where it's something that is like very much encouraged in many awamori, and the way that they're aged is made to like really push it into that pleasurable zone. Whereas a lot of the body you tend to see in many, say, traditionally wood cast spirits. You're getting that from the wood. You're not getting it from the chemical processes that just happen naturally through aging.
Yeah, I agree. Last time I was listening to one with a great chef from Spain, and he said, you can fake the flavor, but you cannot fake texture and temperature. Those two things, you cannot fake it. Flavor you can, but not texture, especially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. If there are no more questions, I think we should head into our final announcements and closing remarks, and we'll have our quiz. So hopefully you guys are paying attention. I tried to help you out the best I could. So Ueno-san, did you want to tell us about what events we have coming up?
Yeah, before going there, Christina, I have one question. When you went to Okinawa, what was the most memorable thing you experienced in Okinawa?
You know what? Like, this is probably a very boring answer because it's not actually crazy exciting. But when we were especially learning about it in the context of doing like our level 3 for WSET and our educators classes, we talk about shochu and aomori, but it's never something that has truly had to be on my radar. So maybe I've tried once or twice. What I thought was so exciting was going to the distilleries and really seeing like those pot stills, how different they looked, and then really seeing like what that would mean for what I'm going to get on the other side. Just seeing where the rice is cooked, just like that whole experience of really understanding something and trying it side by side was incredibly exciting. I mean, the whole trip was really great, but it just helped so much with that understanding, especially with something like Goji, which is not something that is like new or at all, like as a concept, as an entity, but it's just something that we don't really encounter as much or in North America. So even the concept of what it does, how it manifests itself, and even like the acidity it provides was just so different that you can read about something, but trying it and like seeing how it manifests in different ways, good and bad, is something that is really hard to recreate when you're not in that environment. So that's definitely what I love the most. And it was our first stop, right? So that's when you're the most like, wow, like, what's happening?
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. So this was incredible pairing too. That's chocolate truffle with the aged, matured kutsu. And my announcement is next one is on, actually it's tomorrow, the Kubota sake seminar, life of Toji. We're gonna be chasing what he does one day, so that's be fun. And we're gonna have a 24th, we have a Thai food with shochu, and on March 3rd, we're gonna have Kelly Thorne on March 3rd. She is also a Aomori gymner. Looking forward to it. And next one, we have New York Consul General is having another shochu event. This is February is a shochu month, so we are trying to promote shochu and Aomori. So this is done in New York. And the next one, it'll be on Instagram, Facebook. And another one, it's a 28th. This is done by LA. Los Angeles Consul General is organizing this Japanese Craft Spirits Festival. And I'm going to be lecturing on shochu and aomori in this during the festival too. And please join. And good thing in the people who live in US, there is an online promotion on shochu and aomori at MM Sake is offering a 50% off discount. So if you give them this discount code JCS15 at online shop www.mmsake.com and get your aomori today, tomorrow.
And really quickly, as we're talking about where to get Aomori and shochu, Scott is asking Christina, do you have any like places to buy Awamori for home consumption? The LCBO isn't an option, unfortunately.
I mean, Scott, I still have some. And then hopefully, as the border opens up and everything opens up, we can really get some people to bring it up here. It's definitely something I would love to see as like the industry reopens, just to see a broader range of spirits really being expressed, not only in cocktail lists, but on back bars. And there's a lot of events coming up, like Scott, if you like message me on Instagram, like there's a few shochu and other exams, things coming up in Canada and in Toronto specifically that we can like hop on. And if we show people we're interested, then maybe we'll get more stuff up here.
Okay, thank you so much. And her Instagram is exactly her name, just without any spaces. All right, Ueno-san, did we have any more announcements, or can I go back to the quiz?
Quiz time.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch the quiz, and you guys will have 2 minutes. All right, go. So remember, if you get all 3 questions correctly, you'll be able to have a chance to win our Shochu Advisor course, where we'll talk a little bit more about the different types of shochu, again, a little bit more about Aomori. And usually the class is like, what, $400, $500? 475, he whispers. All right. Ooh, I'm seeing a lot of correct answers. Very good. I'm proud of you guys.
Yeah, I
Muted.
yeah, I 3 years ago I went to Okinawa, and it was my first time too, and it was beautiful islands, and food is different, and so even for me, it's really exotic place, and also the people are a little bit different from mainland, and they have more like Polynesian blood in their so they look like Hawaiian, they look like Polynesian than a Japanese or Asian looks like us.
Yeah, I think they do tend to be tanner, and they have a little bit different facial features. And you guys have about 20 more seconds.
Yeah, they have a little bit more, bigger eyes and darker skins, and yeah.
10 more seconds, guys. I also really liked Christina's pairing with the chocolate, because you could also put the awamori in the chocolate and kind of boil off or steam off the alcohol content in it.
Yeah, I think something that'd be really cool is to see a dessert that typically has alcohol, like a tiramisu or something, with one of those more aged. Like this one is a really ideal one because it's like 5 to 15 years different age in there. If you can get that in, very decadent, but definitely would probably taste so good.
All right, so we're gonna quickly go over the answers to the quiz. What does awamori mean? It means bubbly spirits. What do Okinawa locals call awamori? It's shimazake. And what was the Okinawa prefecture previously called? It's Ryukyu. All right, so I think about 90% of everybody got those correct. And we'll be announcing the winner in a follow-up email tomorrow, as well as linking the recording of this video, as well as the recipes and the food pairings. Were there any final words you guys wanted to say before we say goodbye?
Christina, go ahead.
I mean, I just want to thank everyone for coming. This is definitely, last year, going on that trip was one of my favorite things I've ever done. And being able to talk to people and really introduce people to it it's just always a pleasure.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate it that you supported this event, and I am really honored to have you here, and I'd like to see you sometime in the future. And keep let us know what we can do in the future, and thank everyone who participated this session today. I appreciate it that many people come from all over the world, and appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thank
one.
you. It was amazing having Christina here. And in that follow-up email, by the way, guys, we do have a small survey. It's just 3 questions, very short. If you could answer that, it would definitely help us have more events like this with the Japanese government and the Okinawa Aomori Distillers Association. So please be sure to check that out. And thank you. Have a good day, guys. Bye.